Testing mic, testing. Looks good. Lee, how is it? Okay, I'm just gonna say some stuff and then I'll come and check with you, okay? Okay, just doing an audio check on the mic. How's that? Did you hear me? Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you. Oh. Oh. Right. Right, I think we'll make a start. Hi, welcome to this video. So it's live stream number 2. First live stream didn't really go that well for a number of reasons. Quite a bit of a train wreck, to be honest. So I've just sort of done a bit of prepping for this particular one, got a few things sorted, and now hopefully this is going to work a lot better. But I am hoping that you did manage to watch my video on install a Node.js and the Vue CLI on your computer. If you haven't already done so, and you don't have Node installed, or you want to check if you've got Node installed, check out this intro to video here. It's just under 12 minutes long, and it sort of explains how on Windows or Mac to install. It's very straightforward. You just go to the Node.js website and you just follow the instructions. It's as simple as that. Windows, it's very straightforward. Mac, it's very straightforward. So hopefully by the time you've done that, you'll be able to come back and actually do what we're going to do in this live stream here. If you haven't, and if you just want to follow along anyway, that's fine. If you're watching this as a pre-recorded video, obviously you can go and make sure you've got all it installed, come back to it and carry on watching. Either way, you do it as you see fit, but if you do work along with me as I do it, you will find it is a bit easier to learn. You see how the things work. So hopefully you've got everything in place. So if you have got everything in place, you will have Node npm and the Vue CLI installed, and you'll have the Visual Studio Code text editor installed as well. So we'll come back to that in a second. Let's just check where we are with Node. So to make this work, if you type node-v, and you should get a version number, which we have, so that's fine. And you should be able to type npm-v, and you should get a version number as well. So that's brilliant. If you type in Vue, and I think it's capital V, you get Vue CLI 405. So if them three things are coming up with version numbers, then we're good to go, and that's great. So, and hopefully you've got the Visual Studio Code editor. You can use others. Excuse me, I use Atom as well, and there's some others out there that could be useful. If you're on Windows, you can use simple ones. You can use simple ones on the Mac. But ideally, if you can get ones that are specifically for code editors, not Xcode as such, because that's more to do with app development, but perhaps some of the ones that I've mentioned. The intro video that I referred to sort of mentions a few that might be on the market that are of interest. Anyway, let's get going. Let's get started with this. So basically, the initial live stream that you will have possibly watched was our choice of saying, right, let's make Asteroids and let's show it in the P5 web editor and how we can make the dynamics of that work. It didn't really end quite well because the browser crashed and apparently the quality wasn't great, but we did get it to work, which is good. So what I've done is I've sort of tried to capture that so that we can do it properly in a desktop environment and then build from there. So essentially we are going to start again, but obviously we'll be able to skip through quite a lot of stuff a lot quicker because we did it last time on the live video. So first of all, let's get the website set up. Now, I'm on a Mac. Your preferences for doing this, it's similar how you do things on Windows, but either way, so if you can follow the general directions of what I give. Now what I've done is I've just created a folder on my desktop here called YouTube, just because I'm the one streaming to YouTube. You can call it websites or sites or home egg coding or whatever you want to call it. That's up to you, as long as you know what that folder is. Okay, so at the minute inside it's empty, it's fine, nothing in there at all. So I'm just checking over my references here. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do is create a new folder in here, but we're going to do it from the command line. So I'm going to bring up my terminal here, and to come to this folder in the command line on the Mac, I think you can do it similar on Windows. You just type in cd space and then drag the folder that you want to go to onto the terminal, and that will bring up where I want to go to, and that's great. I'm now in the YouTube folder, which is here, and I'll just check what we've got in here, and we should have nothing at all, right? So what we're going to do now is use Vue to create our web app, and it's very straightforward. You just type Vue create. Now I was half tempted to call this Asteroids, but I just didn't want to infringe on anyone's copyright. So what I've decided to do is just call it Rocks. Obviously we'll be referring to it as Asteroids, no doubt, as we go through, but we're just going to call it Rocks. Okay, right, so we've got a number of options here now. Pick a preset, so we can go to default or manual. I'm just going to go with default here. Okay, so this is going to install the project into that particular folder. I'm just getting a bit of a warning about the stream quality. Now, I don't know if this is still coming through live. Just let me check a connection here. Okay. Right, so this is just installing now. It does take a minute or two to install. I'm just a bit concerned that if you're watching this on the recording, this probably won't mean anything to you, but on the live, I'm just showing that there's a bit of an issue getting through. I'm just going to check if I can load a website from... Yeah, so... Okay, so yeah, I am able to load the internet, so it might just be that YouTube itself has got a bit of an issue, but hopefully that will resolve as we go through. Okay, well, we'll carry on anyway, and if the live stream has failed, I do apologise, but we'll pick that up on the recording. So you can see here that we've says successfully created project rocks, so we need to get started. So we need to go into the rocks folder. If I just open up now the YouTube folder, you can see we have this rocks folder, and that's where our code starts. So we need to go into there, so that's quite simple. We just cd rocks, and then notice that it says npm run serve. So let's see what that does for us. So let's copy and paste that into there. And that should give us a web server that we can open and start with our app. Okay, so we're running locally here. So if I just copy this, well, I can go straight to open URL. Oh, it opens it in the other window. So I'll just bring it across to here. And there we are. This is our new Vue.js app ready to go. So that's good. What we need to do now is open an editor so that we can start tinkering with this. So what I'm going to do, this is a little shortcut I showed on the introduction video, is I'm just going to open a new tab here. So it should open it in the same folder as where we are. Okay, it's still not showing that people are watching, so I'm wondering if there is an issue with the stream. That's a real shame. Okay. Let me just come out of here. Oh, okay, it still seems to be okay. Okay, right, we'll carry on with that. So we're in the rocks folder, and what I wanted to do was type in code. Again, you'll see this in the intro video that I did, intro 2. And we can type in code dot, and that will open up the code editor for us in that folder where we can start editing the code. So this is great. See, we're in the rocks folder here, so all our code is here. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about all of this here for the minute. Most of it's just stuff that's needed to make the website function. What we're interested in is what's in the source folder. And these are the files we're going to be working with. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this now. The idea I want to do is as we develop, we sort of keep referring to bits of the site and learn in increments rather than try and learn a whole, what does this file do, what does that file do. So just very briefly, main.js is the file that first launches for us. So we just have a few little things in there. Import Vue, import the app, which is this file here. We'll come to that in a second. And then we render that app to the browser. Okay, so let's jump to the app file. So here we are. The app, well, .vue files are generally broken up into 3 parts. So we have still having issues on the stream, and I hope that's not disrupting. Anyway, so we have three parts here: a template, a script, and a style. So this is where we put the presentation information. So if you're familiar with any kind of HTML, then this is where that kind of would reside. Although you're going to see something here like hello world, which is obviously not something you may be used to with HTML if you've seen HTML. We've got the script here, which is effectively JavaScript, but in such a way that how Vue handles JavaScript. And then we have styles, which is if you're familiar with CSS or SAS or anything like that, you'll probably see this as being familiar, where we can actually style up the content on the page. So you'll notice here that we've got an image, and then we've got this hello world component. Now, we don't really, for the purposes of this, we're just going to simply go straight into this. We certainly don't need the image, so I'm going to get rid of that. If I bring this here, let's bring this editor across a bit so we can see what happens as we do both. So if I get rid of the image, I'm just going to put me behind for a bit. You don't need to see me. Okay, let's get rid of the image. Save that, and immediately the image goes from the page, so that's great. So that means that this content here is the content brought in from this hello world. Now that happens to be here in this components folder. So if we click on that, so you'll notice installed CLI plugins, essential links, installed CLI plugins, essential links. So that's the content of this page is here. So again, we don't really need this. So let's close that off, and let's get rid of this component here. What we are going to do though is create a new page in the components folder. So we'll just say new file, and we're going to call this let's call this original.vue. I'll explain why a bit later on, but for now we'll just call it original.vue. And then in the app file, you should be able to now load that file. Import original from components original, and then we need to put it there as well. So you can see how these three references are linked. We import original from the actual file. So this is the file here in the components folder, original, which is here, and we are referencing it now within this script as original. That's how we're going to refer to it. But what we need to do is we need to put it inside this components object here, original. And what that will do is it means we now have access to it on the rest of this page to use the contents of accordingly. So let's go back to the original. So this is the original.vue file. So what we need to do is put a template in there. Okay, so that should close off the template. Excellent. Now we need to put in just a root element, which is the div here. If you've got VS Code and you type div and then tab, it should automatically pad this out like this. If not, just type it out explicitly fully. That's fine. So we're also going to need a script tab as well. So again, if I type script and press tab, it fills out the script tab for us as well. So it just saves a little type. And again, this is what I was talking about in the intro video about convenience methods that you get with these files. So I'm going to save that as it is, but what I will do actually is just put the word original in here, just so that we know we've got access to this file. We know we've received it successfully. So let's just save that. Doesn't seem to be saving, but anyway. Okay. So let's see now if we can add that original. Let's see if we can add this here. Now what should happen is when I save this, the word original should appear at the top of the page here. Let's see if that happens. And we have an error. So let's see what's happened here. Can't resolve components original.view. Okay, so what's happened here? So components are original. There we go. I wonder how many of you may have seen that already. So let's rename that original. And there we go. There we go. So we know it's bringing this file in. So that's good. So now what we need to do now, you'll remember in the P5, in the initial live stream that we set it up for, P5 was pretty much already set up because it's a P5 editor. It already has everything in place that is needed in order for P5 to work. It's not like this with Vue. We've just got to do a little bit of housekeeping. It's just going to take a few minutes just to get it up to that point. So what we need to do is just do a few imports. So what I'm going to do first of all is, if we go back to the P5 website, we need to install this. So was it on the download page? I can't remember. Let's have a look. Get started, was it? We need to find the npm reference. Reference, libraries, learn examples. Yeah, I can't remember where it was. Is it under home? No, I don't know. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go to the, let's go to the one that's running because I want to stop that. So we do npm search p5. So remember npm is our package manager, and here we go. So there's a number of p5 here. So I would imagine we just need to install this one here, this main P5 build here. So npm install P5. And then that just should take a moment to install. Okay, so I think that's installed. Added one package, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's go back to our code. So now what we need to do is we need to import this into our code. So let's go import P5 from P5. Now this is case sensitive, so make sure you put the capital P here. Well, you can actually call this what you want, but make sure I've called it P5 because later on in the code I refer to it as a capital P. But this is important that it's a lowercase p here, otherwise it won't import. So let's import that there. Okay, now what we need to do, you'll remember from the original stream that we have life cycle methods we need to implement. And there's one in particular in Vue that we are interested in right now, which is the mounted method. So let's put that in there. And then in here, we need to do a little bit of code and then we're done. So let's start off with let script equals P5. Call this the big arrow. I think it's got all kinds of different names, but we'll call it big arrow for today. Open brace. Okay, so P5 dot setup equals underscore big arrow open brace, and then we can say, actually, do you know what, I think we can do without the brace. We can do this here, this dot setup P5. I've put P6, okay, P5. Okay, so then we need to do the same again with the draw method. So let's just copy that. So let script P5. Oh, right, no, okay, I've done that wrong. So let's get rid of that and let's just copy this one down. So this one needs to be P5.draw. P5.draw underscore this draw. Now, if you were involved in the first live stream, this is going to start to look familiar now, because you'll remember we had the two methods to start with, setup and draw. So what this is saying is that with regards, we've imported P5 into this library, and now setup and draw are actually going to be these methods here that we're just about to introduce, setup and draw. But before we do that, just at the end of the mounted script, we need to say this.p5 equals new, and here's capital P5 and then script. So that's this script here, goes into there. This P5, it's what's referenced here. That's why it's important to be the capital. And then this just binds it all together. I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I know that this is what basically works. But you'll notice that we've used this with an underscore here and without one here. That's because it's to do with how JavaScript references variables from different places of the code. Now this underscore this here technically doesn't even exist at the minute, so we need to create that. So all we're doing is making a copy of the original this, like that. And what this means is when we go inside this function here, the this keyword changes. It's no longer what it is here, it becomes something else. The problem with that is when we go inside this function, we still need to access the original this to get these methods. So what we do is we make a copy or a reference to the original this into this one with the underscore, so that we can use it inside this function and it still works. So that's why we make a copy of that here, so we can then access it while we're inside this function here. So that's all what that is. We're back outside the function here, so we don't need to use the underscore, but we run the P5 script to get things started. Now the only other thing to do now is to set up these two methods, setup and draw. So let's do that. So we need to set up a holder for the methods, and then we just need to go setup, capitals on there, take that off, setup, passing the P5 object, which we passed in here, P5, we'll call it P5 again. We could change the name of that here if we wanted, but I'm just going to leave it as P5. And then we do the same again for the draw method. So draw P5, open and close curly brace. Now I'm just going to put some comments in there for the minute, just so that it holds its place and doesn't error. Now if I save this, what happens? Okay, well we still have the original, so that means there's not an error as such. In fact, I'm just going to bring up the console for this page. Let's have a look in here. Oh yeah, we do have errors, so let's see what's happened here. So let's close that, let's have a look. Okay, let's just reload the page here and see what happens. The site can't be reached, and that's because I turned it off when I was installing P5. So let's go back to npm run save. Okay, I don't think this took too long. No, but we do have an error. So P5 is defined but never used. Oh, okay, that's not too bad. Let's see what we can do about that. So in other words, we're passing P5 in here, but nothing's happening. And because nothing's happening, JavaScript, or certainly the compiler, is saying, well, why have you even done that? You're not doing anything with it. So what we'll do for now is we'll simply just put a simple P5 function in. You remember we had one P5 dot ellipse, so we'll just say 10 10 10, and let's just copy that down to here as well. Okay, so at least we should get rid of that. Now okay, so that hasn't worked as well as we liked. I think do you know what, we might get away with just doing it like this, is it? remember how this works now, what the notation is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the original notation. So P5 setup, I think it's that. Let's try that one. Let's see if that works. What's the error now? Unexpected token. Expecting a semicolon. I think they should be next to there like that. So P5 setup. No, it doesn't like that. Okay. This is weird because it worked on the other side, which is very strange. Let me just go back to the original site that I was looking at. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy it exactly as it was on the one I was working on originally. So let me copy this. Okay. So P5 setup. Okay, so let's see. That looks about right now. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's working. It didn't like the fact that I put it all in one line. Okay, I thought that should have worked. So that's all worked fine. However, we do have a circle. Now that's weird because I haven't even set up the div for the circle to go in yet. So that's curious to say the least. Okay, well, let's see if we can put a canvas on here. So what we need to do now is up here, let's get rid of this word original, and we need to type in div, and then I think it's ref equals canvas, and then we need to close that div off. Okay. So it's complaining about that again. Let's just reload the page. No, it doesn't like that. Okay. What I'm just going to do, just to keep it happy, is just console log that out. Does it like that? No, it doesn't like that. Okay, so we can't do that. Okay, let's do it the old-fashioned way. Equals okay, so just had to go back to some slightly old style code, but that's fine, it works. You should be able to do that in yours as well. Okay, so so we have a canvas now, but we also need to set up this canvas. Why is it drawing 4 circles? Okay, maybe I must have loaded 4 times. Okay, that's fine. So what we need to do now is one of the other life cycle methods is created, which occurs before mounted and before a few other things happen. So let's put the created method in. Now in this is quite a straightforward one. We need to set this client width equals window dot inner width, and copy that down. This client height equals window inner height. Okay, we're 30 minutes in and we still haven't got started with the asteroids. Brilliant. Okay, so that's fine. So we need to set up some data now for this to reference. So let's set up a data and we return an object from that data. So we've got client here, client width and client height. So let's set up the client object, and we have width, and we'll set that initially to 0, and we have height, and we'll set that initially to 0. We just need to put a comment in here. Okay, so what else do we need to do? Okay, so we then started with the setup function, which is here, and we started to build up remember setup runs once on the page, so on the app load as it were. So what we need to do is set the canvas up. Now I think I need to set up a variable called canvas. Yes, I do. So in here, I'm just going to go canvas null. No, let's put a space in there. Canvas null. And then in the setup, let's get rid of that P5. Let's just pull this across a bit. Okay. So then that canvas data attribute there, we now initialize it with P5 create canvas. Now, I've set some parameters in here because I was tweaking with the screen earlier, trying to make it work. Let's see if we can just set it to this client width. Remember we set them earlier, client width and client height. We set them to inner width and inner height. So let's see if that works. Okay, well we're not getting an error, but you notice I'm getting this scrolly here. It's almost as if the canvas is bigger than the screen, which is obviously not what we wanted. So let's come back to that in a minute. At least we can see the circle. So what else do we need to do? Okay, let's see if we can start doing stuff with the background now. So let's try P5 dot background 0. Let's see if that does anything. No, we're still getting an error in here. No, still working. Okay, but obviously the browser's just not playing ball with us today. Oh, there we go. We do need to reload the page. Okay, fair enough. We'll make it wider. What happens? Yeah, so it's just, see the way it's just scrolling over the edge here. I'm not happy with that. But notice there's a huge gap up here. So let's address that. I think the best thing to do is maybe well, let's inspect it and see what it is that's got that big margin on it. So the canvas is here, everything's fine up to here. The body is fine. It's got a margin of 8, but that's just that little bit of orange that you can see at the top there. So what is it above there that's happening? Oh, the app. So the app has a margin top of 60. Ah, okay, right, let's take that out then. So that's on this page here. So app, oh, it's here. Let's get rid of that. Do we have to reload? Yes, we do. Ah, now see, that is much smaller, but we've still got a bit of a border going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a few style changes here in the app file to the body element. That's this one here. I'm going to get rid of all the padding and border. So if I just say padding 0 and margin 0, that's that's reloaded itself, and it's very close to the final position, isn't it? And I think this is where I ended up with them little tweaking numbers earlier when I was first copied the code in. So let's see how many do we need to copy that by. Let's say 10 on the height. So let's see, how can we do this? Let's inspect the canvas. So the canvas is a height of 903 and the body is a height of 907. The app is 916. 916. So that's obviously clearly too much. Why is the app so big? Let's go back to the style in here, see if there's anything else. No, there's nothing else here that should affect that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a padding and a margin of 0 on the app as well. Just see if that makes a difference. Okay, that ellipse there, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger. So we say, just so I can see what happens when we scroll. Well, not bigger, I'm just going to move it into the page more. So let's just reload. And save that file. 50, 50 and 10. So 50 in, 50 down, and a radius of what, 30? Let's do 30, P5 ellipse. Let's reload the page. Ah, there we go. Okay, so still moving a little bit, isn't it? Okay, let's just tidy that up. So, what do we need? It's the app, isn't it? Yeah, the app's just a bit big. So what I'm going to do is height is 100 VH. Let's see if that works. No, that didn't work. So height equals 100%. No, that didn't work either. I do believe I might have missed a line here. So in setup, yeah, I've missed a line. This was one of these little tweak things I needed to put in. So just under this canvas equals P5, just put this line in here. We'll explain it another time because I really want to get going with some code in here. So let's just reload that page. Still got a bit of a height issue there. So let's just put a -10 in here. No, that's not done it. Let's say 20. Oh, not 200. 20. 20. 20 has done it, and the width seems to be fixed as well. So was 20 too much? Let's try 15. Let's reload on 15. Yeah, that looks fine. Let's try 10. Yeah. Still loading. Okay. Yeah, seems okay on 10. Do you know what? I'm going to leave it there. If we have any issues with that, we'll come back to that later. So you should have now a working canvas that we can start changing and manipulating. So the first thing I want to do is address the asteroid. I was tempted maybe originally to do the ship first, but the asteroid is the one I want to look at first, because remember, the whole idea of this is to create the original game, which is why we've called this file original, but then ultimately to make this into this multiplayer system. And the thing is, the way we do the ship might change, because we could have, well, we will have many players on the screen or in the game at once. So that might change, and I'm still thinking through how that might work. Whereas the asteroids are probably going to stay the same in how they, in how they work and how they present themselves on the screen. So I want to start with the asteroids. I can't remember how the original game is played with the asteroids, but we're just going to have a mess around anyway, and we could possibly change it later. So let's create first of all a folder in the source folder. So let's create new folder, and we're going to call this classes. And then inside this classes, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it asteroid. Let's call it with a capital A, asteroid.js. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, so in this file, we're going to set up an asteroid class. Now, don't worry too much about classes for now, but essentially, to all intents and purposes, it's just a way for us to combine and put together logic and data and methods that all belong to the asteroid specifically, so it just keeps it all nice and contained. So let's just create a simple class to get started. So export default class asteroid. Okay, so we're now inside our class. Now let's think about this. What kind of characteristics does an asteroid have? Well, it obviously has a position on the screen, and in this particular game the position moves. So there's two things we need to bear in mind straight away. It also has, we have this jaggedness element. We're not just going to put circles on the screen, which I think we did on the first live stream. We have this jagged edge sort of scenario we need to look at. So there's a couple of things we need to factor in there as well. So I'll tell you what, let's just start with the circles first of all. Let's just get the basic circles up. So for that, we'll need a position and we'll need a radius. Okay. So now when we first create the asteroid class, we can pass things in to initialize it. And we do that by means of a constructor. Now, as always, we have to pass P5 in because it's easier to pass it in this way than to try and import it here. So we'll do P5, we'll set its initial X and Y coordinates on the screen, and we'll give it a radius as well. So we're going to do that in our constructor. Now, let's set also, no, what we'll do is this dot position equals P5 dot, now you maybe remember this from the last video, create vector, and this gets an X and a Y coordinate, which we have. So we now have our asteroid location on the screen. We also need to set the radius, so this dot radius equals R. So the X and the Y are what's passed in here, and the R is what passed in here. But you notice that we've prefixed this with this position here and this radius here with the keyword this. And that's because the this is now inside this asteroid class. If we just said position like this, it wouldn't find it within this function. That's not good enough to identify it as being this one. It looks for it in this function, it can't see it, it will error. So what we need to do is put this dot, and that says basically anything inside this class. So this position, this radius, that's what's set here. So that's enough to get us going with the size of it. What we're going to do now is create a display or show method. What should we call it? We'll call it show. So we pass in the P5 library into that. Okay, and so what we need to do now is essentially just draw the circle at its X and Y. Now that's very easily done. We just simply say P5 dot ellipse this dot position dot X, this dot position dot Y. Okay. Now nothing's going to happen at the minute. This is what the original ellipse we drew earlier, and that's because we need to create an asteroid object and run these methods, and we haven't done that yet. So let's go back into here. Let's take out this ellipse here. So we need to remember, we need to set up first of all a asteroid, a reference to asteroid. So what we're going to do is we're going to import that asteroid class that we've just created. So import asteroid from at, which means our current working folder or our current app folder, and we're going into the classes folder now, and then we're going to load the asteroid class. Okay. Now this might start to error now because yeah, it's found it, but we're not using it. It's defined, but it's never used. That's fine. We can live with that. Okay, so what we need to do now is just create one asteroid and see how that looks. So let's go into, let's see, how can we do this? Let's just create a temporary asteroid data object here. We'll give it an initial value of null. We're going to get rid of this in a minute, but we're just going to test it. So then in setup, we'll say this dot asteroid. Now remember, this is in what sort of container we're in, which in this case is the whole of this method or this object from here. So this asteroid refers to this here. So this dot asteroid equals, now let me find the reference code, equals new capital A asteroid, which is the class we've imported here. And then remember, we can pass in parameters to the constructor. So what did we have? We had P5, an X, a Y, and an R. So we can pass in, well, P5 is here, so that's fine. An X, for now, let's just give it 75, 100, and then a radius of, say, 50. And in draw, well, we need to leave that in, otherwise it'll error saying that the P5 is not being used. So we'll leave that as it is for a minute. We've moved this a bit further away. Let's make it 175. Let's make it 175, so it's a bit further away. So hopefully when we save this, do we get a second circle? No. Now that might be because of the color. So let's just see if we can change the color. P5 dot fill 255. Okay. Oh, no. Do you remember we've called the constructor, but we haven't called the show method. So what we need to do now in here, this is where we can get rid of this. We can say this dot asteroid dot show, and we pass in the P5 into that. And that fill, I think, needs to go there. Okay. So P5 says ellipse was expecting at least 3 arguments but received only 2. That's in the asteroid class. Oh, I didn't give it its radius, did I? It does its full width, so I think it needs to be this dot r times 2 for its diameter. So let's reload this again. So again, no error, but no ellipse. So what's going on here? Could it be that I need to put the fill actually where the ellipse is drawn? So let's put that there. Put that there. Okay, so we're not getting, let me just check my reference here. We're not getting a fill on that ellipse. So what's happening here? Let's go back to the beginning. So asteroid we set as null, but then in the setup method we said this asteroid is a new asteroid. We pass in the P5 and 3 parameters. P5, X, Y, R. We set the position to X and Y, and we set the radius to R. Ah, this dot radius. Did any of you spot that? There we go. There we go. Very annoying, but there you go. Okay, cool. So we have our asteroid. So that works fine. So what we're going to do now is go back to here. This was just to check that it works. This is no good. However, what we can do is convert this to, rather than just being one object, let's convert it to an empty array. An array just means a collection of different things, in this case a collection of asteroid objects. So what we're going to do now is in setup, rather than just create the one asteroid, we're going to, let's say, create 10 asteroids. So for x equals 0, while x is less than 10, x plus. Okay, so this is going to loop around 10 times, and then we can simply say, rather than creating, let me just add that back in. Yeah. So rather than just creating one asteroid, what we can do is we can say this dot asteroids, which is now an array, but we can't just say equals anymore because it's an array. It's a collection of more than one. So what we have to do is push this onto the end of the array. Now don't worry about learning all these on this first video. We're going to be doing this plenty of times in future videos. So what did I do wrong here? Oh, I didn't semicolon that out. Okay, now that's fine. X is not defined. Oh, yeah, you always have to define it with a let. Hey. Okay, so do we have an error? Uncall cannot read property show of undefined. Now, so that's what, now we need to loop over the asteroids again in the show. We're not just showing one anymore. So let's loop over the asteroids again. So now it's this dot asteroids x dot show and then close the loop. So don't worry about if you can't understand all of this right now, that's fine. I don't expect you to get everything the first time round. The more you do this, the more you'll get used to it and you'll get to understand, like learning a vocal language or anything else for that matter. Just obviously we can get this working, it makes a lot more sense to us. Now this is obviously working, but we don't have 10 circles. In actual fact we do, it's just that they're all overlapped with each other at the same place because we give them the same X and Y. So what we're going to do is give them a random number. So so for this one, rather than give it a fixed place, we're going to say p5.random, and then we're going to go anywhere up to the width of the screen. Now remember that was under this client width. And the same here, p5.random, and then this is going to be client height. Let's see how that works. And look at that, we have our 10 asteroids on the screen. So how are we doing for time? 5-2. Okay, got a bit more time to go here, so this is good. So we've got our 10 asteroids, but the other thing about the asteroids is what we want to do now is the movement. That's obviously a critical thing that we need to address here. So how can we do the movement? Well, you remember we talked about that earlier, that we have to assign a position, but we also need to sort of allow for its movement. And to do that, what we need to do is do something called a vector with its velocity. So we want to give it a velocity. So what we're going to do here is create a new class variable called velocity, and the velocity is, we're going to give it, let's just give it a fixed one to start with. So let's see, we're going to do this in the constructor. Yeah, I'd say that's fine. So this dot velocity equals, so we're going to use p5 dot create vector again. p5 dot create vector, and let's just give it a value of 1 and 1 to start with. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so what do we do with that velocity? Well, we need to move the we need to move the asteroid around, and the easiest way to do that is we just add the velocity to the position every time this show or this move function is called. So essentially all we're doing is creating a move function, and then we're just simply going to say this dot position dot add, and then we're going to add this dot velocity. So basically the position will be moved by what's in the velocity, which in this case is 1 and 1. Now as you can see, it's not moving, nothing's happening, and that's because, remember, we have to call the move method. So what we're going to do, just above the show method, is go this dot asteroids x dot move, no parameters, and look at that, yay! Although they're all moving in the same direction. Oh, of course they are, because we give them all the same velocity. But notice that it's leaving a trail. That's no good. You may remember this from the last video. That's because we need to redraw the background every time we redraw the asteroids and everything else on the screen. So what we'll do is put the background here, so that's redrawn every time. And excellent, we have our moving asteroids. But I'm not happy that they're all moving in random places, all in one direction. So what I'm going to do now is just call this p5.random, and we're going to move between, say, -1 and 1 for the x, and then p5.random, and for the height we're going to go anywhere between -1 and 1 for that. And hey, look at that, there we go. We have moving asteroids. Rather satisfying, but we're still a long way off from where we were. Well, actually no, I think we're probably quite close, aren't we, to where we were. A long way off from where I wanted to be. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, I think one final thing we'll do for this lesson is, you know from asteroids that when they go to the edge of the screen, what happens is they appear again on the other side, or if they go off the top, they come back on the bottom. So I think that we can put that in. So in order to do that, let's put that as a function in the asteroid class. We'll call that the edge function. So in other words, what happens when an asteroid gets to an edge. Okay, so what we're basically saying, let's think of the pseudo logic here. Remember that on a canvas, 0 for the x begins on the left, anywhere down here, and 0 for the y it is anywhere along here. So this is 0, this is 50, this is 100 as you come down the screen, and this is x's goes up as you go to the right of the screen. So basically what we're saying is, if the asteroid becomes less than 0 on the y-axis, then the asteroid should appear at the height, the y value of the height here, and then carry on in the direction it's going. So let's put that one in place first of all. So what we want to say is, if so this, the asteroid's position x, this dot position, no, y we're dealing with first of all, aren't we? If this position y is less than 0, then, oh, wrong character, then this dot position dot y equals, now we need the height of the screen, but we don't have that here, so we need to pass that in. So what I'm going to do, if you remember in here we have a variable client which has the width and the height, so we're going to pass this client variable in to the edge method here. So we're going to say client dot height. Let's also do it for the other way if it goes the other way. So if position y is greater than client height, then the y returns back to 0. So basically we're saying if it becomes less than 0, which is up here, it will appear at the height. If it goes higher than the height, it will come back to the 0. So we need to pass in the client now. Or we need to actually call this edge function actually, so we don't do that yet. So let's call the edge function this dot asteroids x dot edge, and remember we're passing in this dot client. So let's see what happens to an asteroid that goes off the top. That went off the top there. Is there any more that are getting close? Let's just reload again. Okay, so this is going off the top, and there we go, it appears at the bottom, but it does seem to appear only when it's half gone, and then it appears half back. It's not going completely off, and I think what that is we're measuring from the middle of the circle here. So as soon as the middle of the circle gets to the edge of the screen, so let's follow it here, it immediately appears with the middle of the circle on the bottom. So that's not exactly what we're after. So let's think about this for a second. So we're going back to the edges method. So if this position y, now we're saying less than 0, so that's if it's going up. So with this position y, we want to check if it's less than the radius as well. We want to add the radius onto this value here. So if this position y, I think we add the radius, add this dot radius is less than 0. let's see what happens here. This one's going up here. No, actually we're not going to see it because it's going to go off the X. Let's check, let's follow this one or this one. So it should go all the way off before it appears. All the way off. Ah, brilliant. But it appears halfway on. So what we need to do is say it now equals y plus the radius of it. So in other words, it's going to appear here plus the radius, which is the half circle that we're seeing down at the bottom there. So let's see how, let's save that. Oh, didn't like that, invalid left-hand assignment. So, oh, it's the client height plus plus this dot radius. Okay. So this goes off. So they go off the top. No, that's not working, is it? Let's have a look at the code again. Plus this dot radius is less than 0. Then this position y equals client height plus this dot radius. So it's as if client height has been set to 0, and yet we set this client height here to the width. So this client, let's just console log out what this client is. So console.log client. Let's see what that gives us. Unexpected console statement. I don't know why that's unexpected. Why would that be unexpected? Put that there. Unexpected console statement. No console. I must have put some debugging in or something. I don't know. This is not helpful. If this dot position, alright, let's do the other one. So if this position y plus the radius is less than 0, then this position y equals the client height. Let's just go back to that. So that works, except it comes in halfway off the screen. So it needs to equal the client height plus this dot radius, which is what I had. If this dot, let's try it the other way. If this dot radius position y minus this dot radius, this dot position y equals 0 minus this dot radius. Ideally this is taking it off the screen before it comes back on. Do you know what, let's do the x as well while we're here. So x radius, this position x equals client width Okay, so we're all done now. Let's see how this works. Let's reload the screen. Yeah, okay, yeah, that does seem to be working. So let's check the X value here. This one's coming to the right. Goes all the way off and then comes all the way on at the same time. Brilliant. This one's going up off the Y. Gets past halfway, all the way off, and then there we go. Comes up at the bottom. Brilliant. So our asteroids are now coming off both sides. Well, this is excellent. I think that's pretty much where we were on the original live stream. Hopefully this has been a bit more informative, and also we've done it now in our desktop app as well. I'm just going to change the colouring of this now. So I want the fill to be 0. And I'm going to give it a stroke. So P5 dot stroke of 255 and P5 dot stroke weight of, let's just do 1 for now. There we go. Excellent, so we have our circular asteroids. So let's leave it there for this lesson. On the next one, we're going to look at putting the jaggedy edge onto the asteroid and also the mechanics for what happens when we shoot it, which means ultimately we're going to also have the ship in place as well. So we'll leave it for next time, and if you've been watching, thank you very much. If you're watching on a recording, I hope this has been useful to you.